draining it won't work, I'll fill the whole thing in. So Paul Bunyan took his great shovel and he began to toss dirt into the river. Billy Pilgrim looked nervous. All right, he shouted. It's more than it's worth, but I'll pay you half. Paul Bunyan tossed more dirt into the river and more. Billy Pilgrim began to pace back and forth. All right, he shouted. I'll pay 3/4. Paul Bunyan kept throwing dirt into the river until he had thrown 1,000 shovelfuls. By this time, Billy Pilgrim's face was flushed bright red, and it began to twitch. Finally, he shouted, "Stop! I'll pay it all." So, Paul Bunyan was paid what he was promised. But the 1,000 shovelfuls are still there, and today people call them the Thousand Islands. Did you like that? It is a good story.
When my story was over, many of the children wanted to take home books about Paul Bunyan, but especially Susan, because she'd missed most of the story. When she looked up Paul Bunyan, however, she was surprised to find not one, but several Paul Bunyan books, all by different authors.
Miss Grundy, there are 8 different Paul Bunyan books here, all by different authors. How could this be?
Well, the Paul Bunyan stories are folk tales that were made up by some of the early pioneers as they moved west. And they were told around the campfires and the stoves and in logging camps and road gangs all over the country. We don't know who really made them up, but we do know that many different people did. You'd better hurry, though. I think Paul Bunyan will be a popular choice today.
Were all these people involved in the westward movement going to the same place? No, they weren't.
In class the next school day, during social studies, Susan had something she wanted to share with the class.
Miss Turbin, Saturday at the library, the story hour was about Paul Bunyan, and I took this book out. These stories were made up by early pioneers moving out towards the west. And even though these are tall tales, I think you can learn something about those men from the stories. And I was wondering if I could do my project on Paul Bunyan and the lumbering men.
That'll be fine, Susan. Class, who else would be interested in working with Susan?
The class unit on the westward expansion had reached the point where students were developing special projects relating to it on their own. Susan's idea stimulated a general discussion on folklore, and when it was over, 5 other students had decided to join with her in preparing a presentation of some kind. At their first meeting, they debated a variety of approaches without agreement. Then Susan had a thought, to do a kind of TV show with puppets. They all agreed that had great possibilities. And before their meeting broke up, they had decided Susan and Sharon would look into story material and start working out a script. Ben and Jimmy were going to tackle the problem of the stage. And Mark and Jack were to look into the matter of the puppets.
Jack, have you ever made puppets before? Where should we start?
The library!
Man, what a brain! Wow!
Just call me Einstein. I think I'll look around and see what I can find.
Well, I think I'll take the card catalog first.
Okay.
Mark knows very well how to use the card catalog. He knows that books in the library are listed alphabetically, by title, by author, and by subject. Mark didn't know any names of books he might want, or the authors, so he just looked for the subject card, Puppets. And he was surprised to see how many different books the library had on the subject. One book sounded especially good, so Mark made a note of the call number. This number shows where the book is on the shelves. The letter on the second line stands for the name of the author. It seemed to Mark that the call number of a book on the shelf was very much like a house address on a street. Books on a similar subject were all grouped together as if they were in one neighborhood, with a different group number for each subject. For example, 500s for natural science, 600s for applied science, technology, 700s for fine arts and recreation. What Mark was looking for. This system, or one not very different from it, is used in libraries all over the country. School libraries, public libraries, libraries in government and business organizations, and Mark could go into any one of them without being entirely strange. Jack seems to have stopped in another neighborhood. Wonder what he's found there. Jack seems to have been temporarily diverted. He finds it hard to walk through a library with so many goodies without stopping to sample a few.
Hello, Jack. Are you finding what you want?
Boy, this book is real key. It's about space travel and everything.
That is a good one.
But Mark and I are working on a puppet show about Paul Bunyan. I'm supposed to be looking for something that would help us.
Well, I see that Mark found the books on puppetry. Have you thought about how you want Paul to look?
No, that's something I need to find out. And also how a logging camp would look.
Why don't you look in the vertical file for some pictures under lumbering? And I think if you look in the card catalog, you might find that we have a film strip about Paul Bunyan. That ought to help you get started.
Gee, thanks.
There was no doubt the vertical files held promise of being useful for pictures and pamphlets.
Jack, you might be interested in the transparencies, too. We have a collection of these, of maps and charts and things that you might use with the overhead projector.
Hey, yeah, we could project one as a background, and we could make something new of our own, couldn't we?
Yes, lots of kids do.
The transparencies and overhead projectors are not the only features besides books to be found in the library in Jack's school. In the card catalog are to be found listings of charts, records and magnetic tapes, kits, film strips, films, and much more, all listed on cards with different color bands. For there are many ways to bring you information, and libraries can be centers for these different materials and the equipment to use them. For example, science trays contain materials the class or individual student may work with, on magnetism, air, electricity, and the like. Tapes may be found with expert talks or dramatic stories or music programs. In Jack's school, the equipment centered in the library may be used right there or moved for use throughout the school. FS for film strip.
Hey, look what I found, a film strip on Paul Bunyan. Neat.
With his axe, which was wide as a barn door, Paul could level forests in a single day. He and his woodsmen logged off the entire state of North Dakota in a single month. You know, maybe we ought to know something about lumbering. You wouldn't happen to have a book here on it, would you?
No, but there must be something in the encyclopedia. We have a stack of old National Geographics that might have something.
The library in Sharon's home has books in it that she and her family have loved reading. Some reference books, like the encyclopedia she's using now, some magazines, and of course a dictionary.
Here it is, lumber. Lumbering was one of the earliest industries to be started in colonial America. Hey, look at this picture of lumbering.
While the puppets were taking shape in Sharon's house, Ben and Jimmy were getting a good start on the stage, with some help from some people they had never even met. One evening, Susan went along to the library with her father. The public library serves the entire community, and Susan's father and mother use it as much as she does.
Miss Grandy, I wanted to make a map on Paul Bunyan showing where he went.
Have you checked the atlases?
I looked in an atlas, but the only thing I could find had too much stuff in it. Had cities and counties and all that.
Well, you should check some of the other atlases. There are maps showing all sorts of different things. Look, here are maps showing population, climate, minerals, rainfall. There are lots of different kinds of information you can put on a map. Or maybe you could take a topographic map, one showing the mountains and the plains and the rivers, and you could make an outline of just the states that you want to show on it. Or let me see. We have some historical maps that show the country back when people were first telling those stories about Paul Bunyan. Susan told me how my story hour had been indirectly responsible for her class project. I was very pleased. That sounds very interesting, Susan. Hello.
Hello, how are you today?
You know, there are many stories and books about pioneer life that you might like to read.
Gee, I would.
Well, let's see. There's Caddy Woodlawn, The Little House on the Prairie, Narcissa Whitman.
And I enjoyed Children of the Covered Wagon.
Oh, yes, that's a good one. I'll see what's in.
Fine. Find what you wanted?
As I sat down one evening within a small cafe.
Mark thought some folk music would liven up their production. And in the record collection in the school library, he found several promising albums.
I see that you're a logger and not a common bum, 'cause nobody but a logger stirs coffee with his thumb.
Jack finds the library a delightful place full of treasures to enrich his life, sometimes with learning, sometimes just with fun, and he is always ready to taste, to sample, to enjoy. Jack's interest in books is one he will never lose. In high school and college, and in his home life, there will always be libraries for study and for pleasure. For being indirectly responsible, I was invited to attend the performance of the show.
Gee, I'm bored. I wonder what's on TV.
Don't wait another minute, folks. Run right down to your nearest favorite friendly roach exterminator and ask for Buggeroni. The roaches love it. They'll keel right over, folks, but they'll die happy.
Turn off that blasted idiot box. I'm trying to get these bills paid. Oh, Daddy, you're such a sourpuss. Maybe there's something on another channel.
Tonight we take you to a logging camp in the Minnesota woods, where the greatest logger of them all is waiting to tell you about the time he made the Thousand Islands. And here he is, him and his big overgrown self, Paul Bunyan.
Howdy, folks. First I want you to meet some of the men who live with me in the woods. Hot Biscuit Slim, Johnny Inkslinger, Cream Puff Fatty, Billy Whiskers, and Babe, my blue ox. Say hi to the folks, Babe. Moo!
Before our exciting story begins, we'd like to present those singing, axe-swinging sensationals, the Termites 4!
My pappy was a logger and not a common bum, 'cause nobody but a logger stirs coffee with his thumb. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The feature story of their show wasn't even started when Jack began talking about another idea he had.
See, I got a great idea for a science project. You know, space travel. We can make a rocket ship and send it into outer space.
Gee, that's going to take a lot of work. And you'll have to get a lot of information and materials.
Don't worry, I've got a secret weapon. I figured out a place where I can get everything I need.
The library!
Yes, the library. A secret weapon for everybody.